So the best thing about this story is that it probably didn't happen. Like most scholars are like, yeah, Herod was a really bad guy, but there's no other like evidence that there was a slaughter of all these children. Mark and Luke and John don't know it. It doesn't show up in Josephus or any of the historians. But it kind of feels kind of like it could be true. I mean, there's a lot of danger in this world for children. Christmas night, I was like catching up on the news, and there was that article in the Washington Post that the Ukrainians were looking for all the children that the Russians had taken. And then the very next night, Diane Hirschberger, Diane and Roger, who run the borough, she sent me a little note and asked for prayers for one of the families on their street, down the street from where they lived, kind of near 80th and Prospect. She said they had a big gunfire episode. It had like just riddled their van with bullets, and luckily none of the children, they have 4 or 5 kids, were injured. But she said it's the 4th gunfire incident there in just a little less than a year, and that it was just traumatizing. I mean, right? So the scripture where these children are in danger, it feels like this could be true. But the gospel writer Matthew is not trying to give us a historical account. He is trying to tell us a story that will take us back to Exodus. He's trying to take this little baby Jesus, and he's trying to connect him to baby Moses, right? Because he's trying to tell us a story that's not about slaughter or slavery, but about freedom and hope. You remember back in Exodus, remember Pharaoh was a bad guy, and he was paranoid that the Israelites, that the Jewish people were going to take over, and so he decided to have all the little babies killed. But then Moses, you know, was saved by his mother and sister. They put him in that ark and then end up leading all the people to freedom. So Matthew right now wants us to tell us the same story. He wants to say to us, just like Moses took everybody out of slavery and led them to freedom, so this Jesus is going to do the same thing. So now we got a different dictator. Does this sound familiar? You know, now we got Herod, and Herod wants to kill all the babies. But instead, this Jesus is going to be one who's going to rise up and lead people to freedom. So what he's trying to do here, in some ways, is kind of flash this in our mind by using the word Egypt over and over again. When we hear the word Egypt, we think of a place of terror and oppression. But Egypt can also be a place of illumination and light and hope. I mean, you think about that in your own life, right? Like whenever you get to this place that's really difficult and rough, it can be a peril and it can be possibility, right? It could be like you hit bottom and you can just stay there, or it can also be this moment when you kind of find yourself and become a new, fresh person. So that's what Egypt really represents here, this peril or this possibility, this place where you can go forward in a fresh way. And it really depends on kind of how, in a way, how you respond when you are in this really difficult moment. And the gospel writer here wants to give us kind of, let's just say, a good tip-off for how to start the new year. And so he's going to start off really boldly with this word, now. Now, 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 now. Now get up, now do it, now get going. I learned the power of now when I was a really young pastor, like back in 1990, and I was trying to start a church in Olathe, Kansas. It was open, inclusive. It was going to be the first church in Johnson County, maybe one of the first in Kansas that openly welcomed gay and lesbian folks. And that was an uphill climb in Olathe, Kansas. And a dear, dear friend of mine, Donna Blackwood, who some of you knew, she died a couple of years ago. She's just a beautiful, radiant soul. And her husband and her were very involved in the artistic community in Kansas City, and these beautiful daughters, and just everything about her was just full of life and grace. And this is back when you told people about things through print and through flyers. And she helped me like construct these gorgeous pieces that kind of like showed with kids and people of all shapes and colors like what a really beautiful community could be. And she would call and say, hey, let's get out and go take some pictures. The color, the light is great. And I'd be like, well, you're going to do that later in the week? She's like, no, we're going to do it right now. I mean, I learned from Donna that like, not just that anything worth doing is worth doing well. Anything worth doing, you know what, is worth doing. Just get up and go. I mean, that experience of working with her completely changed my life. And that's kind of really shaped how I am, which is just like kind of get up and go. And in case we miss now all through the scripture, then the angel comes to us with another word, which is get up and go, get up and take the child, get up and flee, like 2 or 3 times. Well, the angel shows up like 4 times, which I think is helpful. It would be nice in your own life, when you have like these difficult moments and you can't really decide what to do. If an angel would just show up and give you some direction, that would be kind of a helpful thing. But evidently it happened a lot more back in the day. And in this passage, like right there twice, every time Joseph is like, what do we do? The angel shows up, get up and go and take the, and then he got up and went, and then he gets up and goes. And like we hear this over and over and over again, get up and go. Now get up and go. And if you're looking for a wise word for the new year, like your own mantra, now get up, you could do worse than that, right? Now get up, now get going, now come on. Wes Moore is one of those people who has really been a wise mentor for me. I can remember the very first time I heard him speak in an interview. Like, I can remember standing in my kitchen listening to him being interviewed. He had written a book called The Other Wes Moore. Does that sound familiar? He was 22. He was the first black student from Johns Hopkins to win a Rhodes Scholarship. And he was in Oxford, and then he was in Southern Africa. And his mother, reached out to him and said, there are signs all over Baltimore that say Wes Moore wanted for murder. And it was another Wes Moore. It was a Wes Moore who had just grown up just a couple of streets from him, a couple of years older. And that Wes Moore, like the other Wes Moore, they'd both grown up in homes where they lost their father. Wes Moore, the writer and the student, his father had died tragically. His mother had some resources and was able to kind of connect him with more family. And when he started getting in trouble, she sent him on to military school. He ended up serving in Afghanistan, and then he went on to Johns Hopkins, and then he went on and became really this investment banker and this remarkable person. And when he heard about the other Wes Moore, who was his age, who also grew up without a father, who was a kid with a lot of promise too, whose mother had desperately wanted to help him, who had done everything she could to go to college, but the money had dried up. They were kind of victims of generational poverty, all there in Baltimore. Baltimore, like Egypt, like all the cities, a place of peril and possibility. And when Wes Moore was 8, he got in a scuffle on the playground, and the police arrested him at 8. And so there began his record, right? And he was involved in a jewelry robbery when he was 24. He didn't shoot the guard. It wasn't his gun, but someone shot a guard and killed them, and so he's serving life in prison. So Wes Moore began a relationship with the other Wes Moore, and he wrote this story about it. And hearing him speak with Oprah, he just had this incredible, now get up, now get up, now get up, now get up. And once he was done with Wes Moore, he didn't stop. He went on and he worked on foundations. And then you may have seen the book he wrote in 2020 about Freddie Gray. Remember Freddie Gray, who was killed in Baltimore, who was 25 when he was killed. He was my son's age. He had a pocket knife in his pocket. That's what he had, a pocket. My son has a pocket knife in his, he works on the water, right? These police pulled him over. Well, he was walking down the street and he made eye contact with the police, and the police didn't like it. Remember Freddie Gray was the one they put in the van, and they just did on that joyride, and by the time they got to the police station, every single bone in his body was crushed, and he died five days later, and Baltimore erupted in that. But Wes Moore, in his book about Freddie Gray, he talks about how many times Freddie Gray could have died before he died that day. He said Freddie Gray was born addicted to heroin, premature, underweight. When his mother was finally able to take him home to the project they lived in, the lead level was found to be 6 times higher than the level. So by age 2, he had all kinds of brain damage. But he was just this, everyone said, like this wondrous, glowing person. And Wes Moore, has kept on, and some of you may know the name because in November, this last November, Wes Moore was elected governor at the age of 44 of the state of Maryland. First black governor in the 246-year history of that state, only the 3rd black governor in our entire country's history. Wes Moore is one of those people who's like that angel. You look at his website, and it's not like, he's kind of like Obama. He's not like, I'm going to do all this stuff for you. He's like, what are we going to do together? He's got submit your ideas and join my administration and print your resume here and all that. And he's like that angel. He just keeps saying over and over and over again, now get up, 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 now get up. And it's kind of a word that we need to hear. We don't just need to hear that word about big political issues, right? But about our own life too. I've got a close friend who has been in the art scene here in Kansas City for 30 years, and then her job came to a difficult end. And our own Darla Buckley at church has been working with her, to help her go, now get up. Okay, come on, you got all these other gifts. How can we do? Let me coach you, let me work with you. And Darla's made a big change in her life, right? We all need those people. And one of the blessings of this city is that, you know, we've got a lot of that energy here. We got a lot of the young activists. We got from KC Tenants to Heartland Jobs Center for Jobs and Freedom to Stand Up KC. A lot of people saying, get up, let's go, let's move. And we got artists like that too. Just kind of from being around Fritz and Alison, I've picked up on how supportive the musicians community is here. How people kind of really rally for one another. And if you play an instrument, well, starting next Sunday, you can go and hang out for the open rehearsals. So everybody can go, get your kazoo, right? And they do that, but like starting, what, isn't it next week is the first one? So, but you get the point, right? It's like, let's all get up and let's go. One of the fun things that Joe and I have done is go to other forms of church, like bars, right, and restaurants. Right up the street, you can just about see the Brick. I don't know if you all have ever gone there on a Monday night. The Brick has been around for a while. It's a restaurant, it's a bar, it's got live music, and on Monday night, for the last 25 years almost, they've had the Rural Grit Happy Hour. And I don't know if any of you ever been to the Rural Grit Happy Hour, but it's really a y'all come thing. You bring your instrument, you bring your fiddle, you bring your banjo, you bring your guitar, you bring your washboard, you bring your kazoo, and you play. People get up there on the stage and play. They usually have some headline act too. But we'd gone a few times before COVID, and it was just so fun. It was a lot of those things like a lot of us have done, right? We need to be encouraged to get up because, oh, I used to do that before COVID, right? But now I haven't done it. So in October, I think it was, Fritz had just gotten back from his trip, his tour to Austria and Germany, and I saw that he was going to be at the Rural Grit Happy Hour. He was going to be the main act. You go in there, and like literally there's a woman named Kim. You go in there, and I think you just tell her you want to play, and she's got a little spiral notebook, and she puts your name in there. But on this night, Fritz was the main act, and other people were up there. There was a woman who stood up there. She was a teacher, and she sang this beautiful song. She had a friend who had died, and she'd written a song about being a teacher with her, and it was just. But the very best thing about the Rural Grit Happy Hour is at the very end, everybody who's played comes up there on the stage and they all play together. And if there's 30 people in the place, there's 25 people on the stage and me and Joe and one or two other people like sitting out in the audience, right? I mean, literally. But they call that very last piece the Jubilee, which in Scripture is the day of freedom. In Scripture, the Jubilee is the Sabbath of the Sabbath of the Sabbath. It's the 49th year. It's the day when everybody is free. It's the day when there's no more oppression or hurt or worry or pain, but everybody is just up there in their dancing shoes, living a life of freedom and joy and peace. 2023 is not going to be the year when Joe and I are up on the stage with the kazoo, right? But we can all encourage one another to find new, fresh ways to reach out, to love, to grow, to stretch, to be more the people God calls us to be. So in that spirit, Happy New Year. Now get up.